The gym smelled of stale sweat and chemical lemon, a familiar, oddly comforting scent that usually meant hope for Nia. She was 35 years old, a single mother who worked 3 jobs, and for the last 6 months, this gym, Prestige Fitness, had been her one small sacred escape from the constant grinding weight of financial stress. She wasn't a member. She was a cleaner, working the graveyard shift from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., trading mopping time for access to the showers and the machines before the actual members arrived. It was a quiet deal she'd made with the night manager, Mr. Evans, a decent man who understood the hustle. Tonight, however, Mr. Evans wasn't there. Nia was on her knees in the women's locker room, scrubbing a sticky spot beneath a bench when the front door chimed at 1:15 a.m., breaking the silence. In walked a woman Nia recognized instantly, Lena. Lena was a local icon, a powerful black businesswoman who had built a chain of successful, inclusive yoga studios across the city. Lena was always impeccably dressed, radiating a quiet confidence that Nia admired from afar. Seeing Lena here at Prestige was surprising. Lena's entire brand stood for community, not exclusivity. Lena strode confidently to the front desk, a simple, non-branded gym bag slung over her shoulder. The night manager, on duty, a young, impeccably uniformed man named Chad, gave her a cool, almost suspicious look. "I'm Lena Hayes," she announced, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here for the private tour I booked with Mr. Sterling. I'm considering the ultra-platinum membership." Chad's expression didn't change. He glanced down at a clipboard, then back up, at Lena, his gaze lingering just a moment too long. "I apologize, Miss Hayes," he said, his voice clipped and dry. "I don't see your name on the list. In fact, our policy explicitly states that we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who might compromise the aesthetic or clientele experience." The words "compromise the aesthetic" hung in the air like a cloud of poison, a veiled, naked dismissal that made Nia's stomach turn. She froze, her hand gripping the mop handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lena, a woman who had given so much to this city, was being told in the most sickeningly polite way that she didn't belong. Lena didn't raise her voice, but a flicker of pain flashed across her eyes before her composure returned. She simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "I understand," she said, pulling a small leather-bound notebook from her bag. She jotted something down, her pen scratching sharply in the silence, then turned and walked out, her back straight and her shoulders unbowed. But Nia saw it, the subtle, devastating humiliation inflicted upon a dignified woman. In that instant, scrubbing the floor of a gym that judged people based on their skin color or social standing, Nia felt a fierce heat ignite in her chest. It was the feeling of despair turning into definitive action. Prestige Fitness didn't deserve a client like Lena Hayes, and it certainly didn't deserve her hard-earned money or her harder-earned sweat. Nia rose to her feet, leaving the sticky spot uncleaned. 15 minutes later, she walked out of Prestige Fitness for the last time, her mind blazing with a single impossible idea, the resolution to that impossible idea, and whether Nia can actually pull this off, is what makes the rest of this story critical. That is the loop we have just opened, and I promise you the answer will be satisfying. Nia didn't just walk out of Prestige Fitness that night. She walked away from the only safety net she had woven for herself. That small salary, the free shower, the moment of peace on a deserted treadmill at 3 a.m., it was all gone. The minute she stepped onto the freezing sidewalk, the reality of her rash decision hit her, a cold slap to the face that was worse than the January wind. She had voluntarily thrown away the one thing giving her physical access to a respectable, clean space, and for what? A fleeting moment of moral outrage. As she fumbled with her keys climbing into her ancient Honda, she could still see Chad's smug face and hear the chilling phrase, "Compromise the aesthetic." That phrase was a systemic hammer blow, not just aimed at Lena Hayes, but at every single black person who had ever been told they were too much or not enough to be allowed in a space built on exclusion. Nia felt the fury again, but underneath, it was the sickening fear. Her son, Marcus, was 10 and her daughter, Tiana, was 7. Marcus needed new sneakers, and Tiana desperately needed new glasses. The ones she wore were patched together with Scotch tape, and her prescription was painfully outdated. This was the real stake. Not her job, but her children's health and future. She had promised Marcus and Tiana that she would get them out of their tiny, drafty apartment by the summer. That promise was her oxygen, the reason she worked 3 shifts, cleaning the gym, serving late-night diners at the cozy diner, and assembling circuit boards from home, staring at diagrams until her vision blurred. Now she had traded stability for a dream that felt less like hope and more like a high-speed collision with a concrete wall. She drove straight to Lena Hayes' yoga studio in a balance. It was closed, of course, but Nia sat in the dark parking lot, staring at the welcoming sign, the symbol of a black woman who had succeeded by building her own table. The idea that had blazed in her mind 15 minutes earlier solidified. She was going to open a gym. Not just any gym, but a gym that was the polar opposite of prestige fitness. A gym built on dignity and community, a space where everyone was welcomed, but black professionals like Lena would be actively celebrated. The concept of a black excellence gym was powerful, but the execution was absurd. Nia had exactly $432 in her savings account. That wouldn't even cover the first month's rent on a broom closet, let alone the tens of thousands needed for gym equipment, permits, insurance, and the sheer guts required to start a business in this city. She was a cleaner and a waitress, not an entrepreneur. She could already hear her Aunt Carol's voice. "Nia, you need to be practical. You're risking the children's future on a temper tantrum." Aunt Carol was the next stop. Nia pulled up to her small, neat house just as the sun was thinking about rising. Her aunt, a retired nurse, was the only family Nia truly confided in, the one person who gave her brutal truth alongside boundless love. When Nia laid out her plan over lukewarm coffee, Aunt Carol listened patiently, nodding. "You want to open a gym," she summarized, her face unreadable. "You have $400 and a lot of feelings." Nia leaned forward, her voice a desperate whisper. "Auntie," it was the way that man looked at her, the way he used that language. It felt like a punch. Lena Hayes, a woman who employs half this neighborhood, was told her presence compromised the aesthetic. "That's what they think of US. We need a space where we are the standard, not the exception." She spoke with a conviction that even surprised herself. Aunt Carol sighed, rubbing her temples. "I see the vision, baby. I feel the hurt. But this is not a bake sale. This is a business. You risk your stability. You risk losing the children's tuition savings. You risk looking like a fool to everyone who is already telling you to stay in your lane." The stakes were clear. Nia was risking not just financial ruin, but a deeper, more painful loss. The belief of the few people who mattered most. Her credibility as a responsible mother and a practical adult was on the line. Aunt Carol had to be convinced. "I need your help, Auntie," Nia pleaded. "I don't need money. I need a CO sign. I need you to watch the kids for a few hours, to talk to some of your church contacts, to just believe this is possible." Aunt Carol looked at her, truly looked at her, seeing the fire in her niece's eyes that she hadn't seen since Nia graduated top of her class years ago. That fire had been extinguished by the daily struggle. Now, it was a wildfire. "All right, Nia," she said finally. "I'll give you 1 week. 1 week to find a building and one person with real money who believes in your feelings. If you don't find both, you go back to Mr. Evans and you beg for your job back. Deal?" Nia slammed her hand. Down on the table, the coffee cups rattling. "Deal!" The next 24 hours were a blur of desperate action. Nia quit her 2 remaining jobs via text message. It was a terrifying act of severance, burning every bridge, so she had no choice but to build a new one. She started with the one person who could truly understand the emotional and professional stakes, Lena Hayes. She drove back to Inner Balance and waited for the doors to open. She waited 4 hours, shivering, until Lena Hayes, wearing a stylish trench coat, walked up to the entrance. Nia approached her, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Miss Hayes, my name is Nia. I was cleaning the locker room at Prestige last night." Lena stopped, her expression instantly softening. She remembered the cleaner on her knees. "Hello, dear," she said warmly. "Thank you for saying hello." "I saw what happened," Nia whispered. the shame of the moment still raw. What that man said, that aesthetic comment, it was unacceptable. Lena sighed, her shoulders momentarily slumping. It's not the first time, Nia. It won't be the last. You just learn to move on. No, Miss Hayes, we don't move on this time. 15 minutes after you walked out, I quit my job. I'm opening my own gym, a space where black women like you are the only aesthetic that matters. Nia took a deep, shaky breath, laying her impossible hand on the table. I need you to tell me how to do it, or I need you to invest in it. I have $432. The silence stretched, long and brutal. Lena looked at Nia's worn boots, then at the frantic sincerity in her eyes. Lena saw the reflection of her younger self, the woman who took no disrespect, who had fearlessly started her first studio in a dilapidated warehouse. But she also saw the danger. Nia was risking everything. Nia, Lena said softly, I admire your passion, but you're a cleaner. A gym is $1 million investment. You need equipment, zoning, permits. You need a business plan that will convince a bank, not just a feeling that convinces your heart. You're talking about taking on a system that is designed to see you fail. This is not a hobby. This is war. The stakes were raised. Lena didn't just reject her. She outlined the impossible scale of the challenge. Nia was fighting an industry built on systemic exclusion, armed only with a mop bucket and pure rage. I know it's war, Miss Hayes, Nia said, holding her gaze, her voice now steady. But I have the best weapon. I saw the humiliation in your eyes. And if I saw it, every black woman in this city has felt it. That is our market. That is our firepower. Will you join me in this fight? Lena took a step back, pulling her phone out. You're either the craziest woman I've ever met, or you are a genius, she said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. I can't invest money, not yet. But I can invest time and credibility. I know a space, an old warehouse that was recently vacated. The rent is low, but the place is a disaster. It's the only place you could even hope to afford. I'll take you there right now. That night, Nia and Lena stood together in the vast empty shell of an old textiles warehouse. Dust motes danced in the lone shaft of moonlight, filtering through a grime-caked window. The air was thick with the smell of mold and abandonment. The ceiling leaked in 3 places, and the concrete floor was cracked and stained. It was nothing like the pristine marble-finished floors of Prestige Fitness. It was worn, broken, and perfect. Lena had provided the building, the reality of the location. Now, the stakes shifted from if Nia could start to how she could possibly bridge the gap between this ruin and the luxury gym she promised. The next 24 hours were dedicated to the one person with real money part of her deal with Aunt Carol. Nia's first and only target was Mr. Carter, the most influential black banker in the city, known for his careful, conservative investments. Getting past his secretary was a battle. I don't have an appointment, Nia insisted, her voice projecting confidence she didn't possess. But I have a business proposal that is going to change the landscape of this city, and it is time-sensitive. She knew she had only 30 seconds of his attention. She waited 2 grueling hours before Mr. Carter, a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit, emerged from his office. He stopped, looking down at Nia, who was still wearing her work boots. "You're the young woman who changes the landscape?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Nia didn't falter. She didn't pitch the gym, she pitched the emotion. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice dropping to a low, intense register. "Last night, I watched a powerful black woman, a pillar of this community, be told she wasn't aesthetic enough to be allowed into a wealthy establishment. I saw the pain in her eyes, and I quit my job. This is not about treadmills. This is about dignity and wealth accumulation. Every black dollar spent at a white-owned exclusionary luxury gym is a dollar taken from our community's generational wealth. Our gym will recapture that dignity and recirculate those dollars. This is a movement disguised as a business," she pulled out a single sheet of paper Lena had helped her draft, a simple profit projection based entirely on tapping into the latent fury and pride of the city's black professionals. "We are selling belonging, Mr. Carter. We are selling the feeling of walking in and knowing instantly that you are the most valuable person in the room. Mr. Carter's professional face remained neutral, but his eyes, wise and ancient, showed a flicker of recognition. He too had been told he didn't belong. He too had felt that sting. "And your collateral, Miss Nia?" he asked, his voice low. "My collateral," she replied, unflinching, "is the shame and the rage of a community that is tired of being told they are not enough, and the conviction of a single mother who will not fail her children. I'm not asking for a handout, Mr. Carter. I'm asking you to invest in a revolution. I need $20,000 to secure the lease, permits, and buy 3 key pieces of used equipment. That's all. I will prove the rest of the revenue from memberships." The silence was the longest moment of Nia's life. Mr. Carter studied the single sheet of paper, then handed it back. "Come back tomorrow at 9 a.m., he said. "Bring a real business plan and $5,000 of your own money to show good faith." Nia's stomach dropped. $5,000. She had 400. The stakes had just escalated to an impossible level. She had gained credibility, but she had been given an unachievable hurdle. She called Aunt Carol from the lobby. "Auntie, I have the building and I have the banker," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Bertie wants $5,000 by tomorrow morning. I have to go back to Prestige and beg for my job, or I have to find a miracle." "No begging," Aunt Carol said firmly. "You made a deal. You go back to the source of the rage. You go back to the people." Nia rushed home and looked at her children sleeping soundly in their bunk beds. This was it. She was either going to look like a visionary or a reckless parent. She put her head in her hands, despair momentarily overwhelming the fire. She reached for Tiana's broken glasses, tracing the fragile Scotch tape. The thought of failing them was a physical pain, a weight that threatened to crush her. She had to create a pattern interrupt of her own, a jolt of energy that would propel her forward and potentially shock the necessary funds into existence. She pulled out her old cracked laptop, found a public group chat for local black entrepreneurs and professionals, a group she had only lurked in for years, too intimidated to speak. She didn't write a business pitch. She wrote a confession. She recounted the story of Lena Hayes being kicked out, the shame, the quiet dignity of Lena's exit. She confessed to being the cleaner, to quitting her job, to having only $432, and to standing in a moldy warehouse with a dream and a $5,000 demand from a skeptical banker. She didn't ask for money. She asked for a commitment to change. "I need 5 people to give me $1,000, she wrote. "Not as a donation, but as a founding membership fee. This fee gets you lifetime 24/7 access to the Ascendancy, the gym we are building on the ashes of their exclusion. The money secures the lease and proves to the banker that we are serious. If I fail to secure the funding by 9 a.m. tomorrow, I will personally return every penny. But if we succeed, you are not just a member. You are an owner of the aesthetic. You are a part of the movement. You are buying your dignity back." She hit send, a tremor running through her hands, knowing she had just exposed her entire precarious life to a community she desperately wanted to serve. She had gambled her last shred of credibility. The next few hours were an agonizing cycle of hope and despair. The first response was not money, but a single, powerful word. "I'm in." It was from Lena Hayes. That immediate, unwavering support was the first puff of air that re-inflated the deflating balloon of her attention. An open loop had been acknowledged. Then came the messages. $1,000 sent from an anonymous account for Tiana's glasses. Another from a local doctor. "I've been a guest at Prestige for 5 years. I'm done. Payment sent." A local attorney. "Your courage is a fuel. Count me in." Nia watched the numbers rise on her phone screen. 432, 1,432s, 2,432s, $3,430. She felt a wave of dizzying relief, followed by a profound sense of obligation. The community had answered her desperate, emotional plea. They had invested not in equipment, but in her truth and their shared rage. At 7 a.m., the total was 4,632s. So close, yet so far. Nia's heart sank. She was going to fail. She was going to have to return the money and face Aunt Carol's knowing, disappointed look. She started drafting the apology message. Then a final notification arrived. An old professor of hers, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, had sent the remaining $368. The accompanying message simply read, "Ascend." Nia burst into tears, the relief so intense it was physically painful. She had done it. She had found the $5,000. She had leveraged a moment of shared systemic shame into a $5,000 commitment to self-determination. She had beaten the initial stakes. Now came the final grand one. She had an appointment with a powerful banker, $5,000, and the weight of a community's dreams on her shoulders. The rising action has set the stage. The tension is maximum. Nia has secured the first hurdle, but the entire future of the ascendancy now rests on the next 24 hours and on her ability to convince Mr. Carter, a careful man, to take a monumental leap of faith. This leads directly to the climax of our story. The taxi ride to the bank was a torture session. Nia sat rigidly, clutching the receipt that showed the $5,000 commitment from the community. It wasn't her money. It was a loan based on trust, a collective act of faith. If Mr. Carter rejected the proposal, she would have to face her heroes and her children with the crushing news that she had failed their dreams. The air in the cab was thick with the scent of cheap cleaning fluid, a bitter reminder of the life she had just left behind and the one she might never reach. When she walked into Mr. Carter's opulent office, the contrast with the moldy warehouse was brutal. Mr. Carter sat behind a mahogany desk that looked larger than Nia's entire living room. The city skyline spread out behind him like a conquered landscape. His expression was stern, professional, and utterly unreadable. "Miss Nia," he began, his voice a low monotone that commanded attention. "I admire your guts for showing up, but let's be absolutely clear. I requested a $5,000 personal contribution to verify your seriousness and skin in the game. That money proves you are all in. Did you bring it?" Nia slid the receipt across the polished wood. She did not open her mouth, forcing him to read the paper. Mr. Carter picked it up, his brow furrowing as he saw the multiple small transactions listed. He saw Lena Hayes' name at the top of the list of founders. He saw Tiana's glasses next to a 4-figure number. He saw the note from her old professor. He put the paper down, his face hardening. "This is not what I asked for, Miss Nia. This is a crowd fund. This is sentiment. I asked for collateral and financial commitment. This is risking other people's money based on an emotional appeal. This is reckless, dangerous behavior." His voice was like a whip, and it found its mark. Nia felt the tears well up, but she refused to let them fall. She knew this was the climax. This was the moment where she had to either win the man or lose everything. "No, sir," Nia said, her voice shaking slightly but holding firm. "It is the opposite of reckless. It is the proof you want to see." "My skin in the game?" "My skin has been in the game my entire life. I'm a single mother who worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night to give my kids a chance. I quit 2 jobs. I risked my only stable income. My collateral is the debt of gratitude I owe to that community now. They did not invest in a business. They invested in a belief in me, and I will not fail them." She leaned forward, her elbows on the cold marble, her eyes fixed on his. This was where she pulled the emotional trigger, the re-hook that made him unable to look away. "When you were a young man, Mr. Carter, and you were climbing that ladder, did you never feel the shame? Did you never walk into a room where you were the only black face and feel that subtle shift in the air, the sense that you were on trial? You have built an empire, so you never have to feel that again. But what about the rest of us? The doctors, the lawyers, the engineers who just want to lift a dumbbell without being told they compromise the aesthetic?" Nia's voice rose, filling the silent, sterile office. She was no longer pitching a business. She was staging a revolution. I saw Miss Hayes' face. I saw her quiet dignity. She had earned the right to be there, and they took it from her. That pain is a fuel. I am not asking you for charity. I am asking you to finance the dignity of a whole generation. I am asking you to prove that their money, our money, is as valuable as theirs. That receipt is not a crowdfund. It is a mandate from the people who will be the members The owners, the lifeblood of this gym. They are the collateral. You are financing community, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter's professional mask finally cracked. He sat back, his jaw tight. Nia saw a flicker of deep, ancient resentment in his eyes, the kind that only comes from a lifetime of fighting the quiet, insidious battles of systemic racism. He looked at the receipt again, his gaze lingering on the entry about Tiana's glasses. "I know what it's like to risk everything, Nia," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I mortgaged my mother's house to open this firm. I know the fear." He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the expansive city below. Nia waited, her hands trembling in her lap, the weight of the moment crushing. After a minute, he turned. His expression was still stern, but the neutrality was gone, replaced by a dangerous mixture of respect and caution. "You have convinced me of the need," he stated. "You have convinced me of the heart, but you have not convinced me of the logistics. This is a huge risk. You need to secure the lease. You need to purchase quality equipment, not just 3 used pieces. You need permits, insurance, and payroll for at least 6 months before you see a profit. This is $20,000 for the first hurdle. The total required is at least $200,000. Nia felt the air rush out of her lungs. $200,000, an impossible number. Mr. Carter continued, walking back toward the desk. "I cannot approve a $200,000 business loan based on a handful of founding members and a compelling story." Nia's heart sank into her stomach. This was it. Failure. The crushing realization that her fire was not enough to melt the iron gates of finance. But then, the pattern interrupt. "However," Mr. Carter said, pulling a massive ledger from a vault behind his desk, "my family foundation has a fund dedicated to community development and projects that address systemic inequity. It is not a loan. It is a seed investment. It does not require a perfect business plan. It requires a demonstrated commitment to the community you serve." He opened the ledger, pulling out a pre-signed document. Nia could only stare. "The foundation will provide you with a $100,000 non-repayable grant. This covers the lease, the basic renovations, permits, and an initial marketing push. It is a massive risk, and it is based on the trust that you will uphold the dignity of the community that showed up for you this morning." He paused, holding the paper out. "The remaining $100,000 must be secured through a business loan. My firm will approve that loan, but it will be secured by the grant. You will pay it back, and you will pay it back on time." He looked Nia directly in the eye, his expression now intense and solemn. "You have earned the first half. The second half is your challenge. You will now have the capital, but you also have the debt. You have 12 months to prove your concept before the repayment clock starts ticking." Nia felt a dizzying combination of triumph and terror. She had not just won, she had been handed a daunting ultimatum. She had a mountain of debt, but also the power to build the gym, the weight of the community's expectations and the foundation's massive investment settled onto her shoulders. This was the moment where the dream became a brutal reality. Nia's hand shook as she took the grant paper. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she managed to whisper, the simple words feeling wholly insufficient. "Don't thank me, Nia," he replied, a shadow passing over his eyes. "Thank the people who sent that money. They were your true collateral. Now go. You have a gym to build, and you have 12 months to make sure my foundation doesn't regret this decision." She walked out of the bank with a $100,000 grant and a $100,000 loan, the papers feeling like a 200,000-pound weight. She had won the climax, but the final, most intense phase of her journey, the build, had just begun. The next 12 months were a frenzy of grueling work. Nia moved into the warehouse, sleeping on a cot beside bags of cement and broken plumbing. She spent her days battling city inspectors and suppliers who tried to overcharge her the moment they saw her face. Every single permit application felt like a fresh act of resistance. Lena Hayes proved to be an invaluable mentor, securing discounts on equipment and introducing Nia to contractors who were willing to work for the vision. Aunt Carol showed up every Saturday with Marcus and Tiana, who spent their weekend cleaning mold and scraping paint, their small, eager faces a constant reminder of the stakes. Nia used the power of open loops and rehooking, not just in her script, but in her life. She constantly posted photos and updates to the original community group chat, showing the grime and the grit. She teased the grand reveal of the locker room, holding back the final pristine image. She built the tension of the opening date, promising her founding members that their dignity would be restored. Every time a challenge arose, a plumbing leak, a delayed electrical inspection, a contractor trying to cut corners, Nia didn't just solve it. She turned it into a story of resilience. She turned the grime of the warehouse into the mortar of their collective narrative. She never forgot Chad and his vile words. That memory was the fuel that kept her awake through the endless nights. Finally, exactly 360 days after she walked out of Prestige Fitness, the Ascendancy was ready. It was not just a gym, it was a sanctuary. The colors were deep and rich, the lighting warm and inviting. The equipment was top of the line, secured through careful negotiation and Lena's connections. There were designated areas for community, events, mentorship, and a wall of photos dedicated to local black athletes and leaders. The logo was a stylized, upward-moving arrow, a constant reminder to ascend. On opening day, the line snaked down the block. Lena Hayes was the first person in the door, presenting Nia with a bottle of champagne. Mr. Carter arrived later, quiet and observing. He didn't say much, just a simple nod. "You kept your promise," he said. That quiet validation was worth more than the grant. The climax was not just the securing of the funds, it was the transformation of Nia, the cleaner, into Nia, the CEO and community leader. A transformation powered by shared rage and collective dignity. She had faced the impossible and built the unthinkable. But the final question remains. What did she learn? And how did this new reality change her and her family? The resolution will reveal the final, most profound lesson of this whole journey. 1 year and 20 minutes after Nia walked out of Prestige Fitness, she stood on a simple, elevated platform in the center of the Ascendancy. The gym was packed, not just with the founding members, but with hundreds of new clients, the best of the city's black professional class, all of whom had found a space where their presence was not just tolerated, but celebrated. Nia was no longer the cleaner. She was the owner, the chief executive, the heart of this movement. She looked out at the faces, and her eyes settled on Lena Hayes, who gave her a single, proud nod. Then she looked across the room and saw Marcus and Tiana, sitting side by side, both wearing new, stylish glasses. Tiana's prescription was perfect now, and Marcus's sneakers were the latest brand. They weren't just physically comfortable, they were secure in the knowledge that their mother was a force of nature. Nia closed her eyes, letting the memory wash over her. The humiliation she saw in Lena's eyes, the smell of mold in the warehouse, the chilling indifference in Chad's voice, and the crushing weight of the $5,000 hurdle. The risk had been immeasurable, but the reward was indescribable. She reflected on the experience and realized that the initial pain was not a burden. It was a catalyst. It was the fire under the crucible. She had discovered the single, most powerful weapon against systemic disrespect, self-determination. Prestige Fitness tried to take dignity, but dignity is not something that can be taken. It is something that must be claimed and built. The insight she gained was simple but profound. The value of a space is not measured by its marble floors or the cost of its equipment, but by the worth it assigns to the people inside it. At the Ascendancy, the aesthetic was the excellence of the community, and that made it the most valuable gym in the city. The reality of this success had not just met the expectations of her community, it had smashed them into 1,000,000 pieces. The gym was now profitable. They had paid back Mr. Carter's loan ahead of schedule. She had hired a full staff, including Aunt Carol as the administrative manager, paying her a salary that ensured a comfortable retirement. Nia had given herself one title, Chief Dignity Officer. She laughed when she thought about it, but she was serious. Her job was to make sure everyone who walked through those doors knew they were worthy. And what about Prestige Fitness? The irony was thick and sweet. Their exclusive, exclusionary model was proving to be a financial failure. their best, most lucrative clients had defected to the ascendancy. Rumors spread that Mr. Sterling was selling his share. Chad, the smug manager, had been fired. Nia realized that exclusion wasn't just morally bankrupt, it was bad business. By focusing on what they lacked in their hearts, they lost the one thing they valued: wealth. Nia felt a surge of pure, unadulterated triumph. She had not only beaten them, she had made their old model obsolete. She had proven that pride and principle can be a profitable model. Nia stepped up to the microphone, her voice husky with emotion. 1 year ago, I was on my knees, scrubbing floors in a place that didn't want the likes of us, listening to a powerful woman be told she compromised their aesthetic. I felt the shame in that room, and I knew I had a choice: clean it up or rebuild the entire structure. The crowd murmured, their eyes reflecting the intense emotional journey they had shared with her. We did not just build a gym, she continued, her voice growing stronger. We built a promise. We built a space where our excellence is the only aesthetic. We built a monument to the fact that when you invest in dignity, you are investing in everything. She looked directly at the camera, addressing the million viewers she intended to capture. Every single person watching this has felt that slap of exclusion, that subtle dismissal. You have all been told, in some polite or brutal way, that you are not enough. But let me tell you, that feeling is not a wound. It is a weapon. Use the anger, use the shame, use the frustration. Turn that pain into capital and turn your vision into an ascension. She paused, taking a final, deep breath. The journey was not over. It was just beginning. Nia had plans for more locations, for a training academy, for a foundation that would empower other single mothers to turn their rage into revolution. My name is Nia, she concluded, a smile spreading across her face. And I used to clean their floors. Now I own my future, and so can you. If this story of turning pain into power resonated with you, if you've ever felt the sting of discrimination and dreamed of building your own table, then hit the like button to show your support for Nia's struggle and her triumph. Subscribe to our channel for more Black stories of resilience and victory against the odds. And most importantly, please share your own story in the comments below. Tell us the moment you decided to stop cleaning their mess and start building your own empire. Your story is someone else's fuel. Let's keep the fire burning.